All right, so picture this. You're on the beach in Tulum, sun's out, beautiful blue water, and off in the distance, there's this community trying to blend, well, that ancient Mayan heritage with like modern sustainability. And that is exactly what we're diving into today.
That's pretty cool.
You guys sent us some seriously fascinating documents, by the way, about this development project in Mexico. It's called cdl1320, and I gotta say, I'm hooked.
Yeah, it's a pretty unique concept. I've been seeing a lot of buzz around sustainable communities lately. But this one, it has some really interesting twists to it.
Absolutely. We've got maps, descriptions of the project, and even, they've sprinkled in some philosophical quotes. It's really right up our alley, I think.
It is.
Our main source here is this PDF. The title is cdl_1320_.pdf. And just glancing through this, it's clear they're aiming for something pretty ambitious.
Yeah,
By the end of this deep dive, you'll not only understand the nuts and bolts of this CDL 13.20 project, but you'll also get a feel for the vision behind it. And who knows, it might even spark some ideas about your own relationship with time and nature.
I'm always fascinated by projects that try to bridge that gap between ancient wisdom and modern living, so I'm ready to dive in.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so first things first, the location. This project is near Tulum on the coast of Quintana Roo in Mexico. And they included this map, and you can see they're really emphasizing that location.
Well, Tulum is a hotspot these days. It's known for those beautiful beaches and ecotourism, so strategically placing a development project near there makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
They have access to that existing infrastructure, and it's a ready-made market of people who are interested in that kind of experience.
Yeah, for sure. And they even highlight their proximity to the Siancán Biosphere Reserve,
Yeah.
which, as you know, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Plus, they're close to the new Tulum Airport and a planned station for the Tren Maya, that new train line. It's like they're trying to create this secluded oasis that's still easy to get to.
That's smart. They can tap into that existing tourism infrastructure, but without being right in the middle of all the hustle and bustle.
Exactly.
And speaking of being strategic, let's talk about the name, CDL 13.20. What's the story there? It definitely makes you curious.
It does, right. And it's not just like some random string of letters and numbers. The document explains that CDL originally stood for Ciudad de Luz, which means City of Light in Spanish.
Interesting. So right away, we're getting this sense of enlightenment, right? Like they're focused on something beyond just the physical aspects of development.
Exactly. And then there's that 13.20 part. And this I thought was really fascinating. It's a direct reference to the Mayan calendar system.
No, that's where it gets interesting. The Mayan calendar, it isn't just about tracking the days and months like our modern calendar.
Yeah.
It's this complex system that reflects their deep understanding of natural cycles and how everything is connected.
Yes. And the document mentions that 13.20 represents the 13 lunar cycles and the 20 solar signs that make up their calendar. And it's not just a fun fact. It seems like it's baked into the project's philosophy.
Absolutely. By using that symbolism, they're aligning the project with this concept of cyclical time, which is a really important part of Mayan cosmology. It suggests they're focused on harmony with those natural rhythms, rather than, the linear, always-on mentality that we have in modern life.
Now, this is where I start to wonder, can they actually pull this off? It all sounds amazing, but is it actually feasible to create a community that operates on a totally different concept of time?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's one thing to talk about aligning with natural rhythms, but how do you actually translate that into the everyday realities of running a community? We'll have to keep digging into this and see if they address those practical considerations.
Well, the document does use a lot of language about creating a community of conscious human beings who are seeking inner development and harmony with nature.
Okay, so they're setting the bar pretty high, but what does that phrase actually mean? Is it about individual awareness, ethical living, or is it something else entirely? I think it would be helpful to unpack that concept a little bit, to understand who they're trying to attract and what kind of community they're envisioning.
I agree. And to that point, they also mention adhering to the principles of the Earth Charter, which promotes balance between, human, environmental, and economic development.
The Earth Charter. That's a pretty significant document in the sustainability world. It lays out a framework for creating a more just and sustainable future for everyone. So them invoking that here suggests a real commitment to a certain set of values and principles that go beyond just building eco-friendly homes.
And that's what makes me think this project is more than just a trendy eco-resort. They seem to be genuinely trying to create a model for a different way of living, which is pretty exciting.
It is exciting and potentially groundbreaking. But it also comes with a whole bunch of challenges. How do you balance the needs of a community with preserving a delicate ecosystem, like the one that surrounds Tulum? And how do you translate these lofty ideals into tangible, real-world solutions?
Right, it's one thing to talk about sustainability and harmony, but it's another thing to actually achieve it. And that brings us to the next layer of this project. The two sub-projects they've outlined within CDL 13.2, Una Nueva Tierra, meaning a new earth, and Ciudad de Luz, which we know means city of light.
Hmm. Two sides of the same coin, maybe. One focused on the practical side of sustainable living, and the other on the more philosophical and innovative elements.
It seems that way. Una Nueva Tierra appears to be the more practical side, focusing on providing space for sustainable real estate development. Think, eco-friendly homes, permaculture gardens, and that sort of thing.
You know, this approach to sustainable real estate is gaining traction all over the world. We're seeing similar eco-villages popping up, they emphasize permaculture and self-sufficiency. It's fascinating to see how these ideas are being adapted and implemented in different places.
That's a great point. So CDL 13.20 isn't just this isolated project. It's part of a larger movement towards a more sustainable way of life, which makes me even more curious about Ciudad de Luz. How does that fit into the big picture?
Well, they describe Ciudad de Luz as this hub for research, innovation, and entrepreneurship. It's almost like they're trying to create a think tank or a creative incubator within this larger sustainable community.
It's like they're saying, okay, we've got the sustainable infrastructure in place. Now let's use it to foster creativity and develop new solutions for the future.
Exactly. And that focus on innovation and entrepreneurship is key. They're not just building a retreat from the world. They're trying to create a space where people can actively contribute to building a better future. It's this really fascinating blend of idealism and pragmatism.
And that brings us to the question of who are they trying to attract to this new Earth of theirs? At the end of the document, there's this call for investors, partners, and donations. Seems like they're casting a pretty wide net, but I wonder if there's a specific type of person they have in mind.
Well, there's some clues in the document. They specifically mention projects related to recycling, farming, alternative therapies, herbalism, and eco-friendly cabins.
So they're definitely targeting a niche audience. It's not just about having money to invest. It's about sharing certain values and a willingness to participate in building this alternative way of life.
Right. It seems like they're looking for individuals and organizations who are not only passionate about sustainability, but also interested in personal growth, alternative ways of living, and maybe even a bit of spirituality. It's a unique blend of interests, to say the least.
This whole project is a unique blend of interests, and it raises so many questions like, can they really create this harmonious balance between personal transformation, community living, and sustainable development? Can they attract the right people and resources to make it all work? And how do they navigate the potential pitfalls of operating in a rapidly developing region like Tulum?
Those are all crucial questions. And honestly, the document doesn't give us all the answers, but it does offer us a glimpse into a potential future, a future where ancient wisdom and modern innovation converge to create a more sustainable and fulfilling way of life. And that's what makes this deep dive so intriguing. We're not just analyzing the development project, we're exploring a set of ideas that could have ripple effects far beyond the borders of CDL 13.20.
I completely agree. And speaking of ripple effects, there's this thought-provoking quote from Jose Arguello that we found in the document. It says, just as air is the atmosphere of the body, so time is the atmosphere of the mind. Possess your own time and you will know your own mind. What do you make of that in the context of this project?
Wow, that quote really gets to the heart of what CDL 13.20 is trying to achieve. At least in principle, it's about shifting our perspective on time, moving away from that, that linear, always-on mentality and embracing a more cyclical, present-centered approach.
I think we need to dive deeper into that idea because it feels like a key to unlocking a whole different way of thinking about life, development, and our relationship with nature.
That quote really stuck with me too.
It's just like they're saying, hey, what if we could create a space where time isn't this thing that's constantly like slipping away from us, but something that we can actually, inhabit and shape?
That's a great way to put it. And if we can actually achieve that shift in how we see time,
Yeah.
it opens up a whole world of possibilities. We can start making decisions
Yeah.
that are more aligned with our values, with the well-being of our communities, and with the long-term health of the planet.
Okay, I'm getting chills here. This is a powerful vision. But let's zoom back in on the practicalities for a second. How do they actually plan to achieve this harmony between personal growth, community living, and sustainable development?
Well, the document itself is more of a vision statement than a detailed plan. But based on what we've seen so far, they seem to be focusing on a few key areas: eco-friendly design and technology, a focus on local and organic food production, and the creation of spaces for learning, creativity, and spiritual exploration.
They mention things like recycling programs, permaculture gardens, alternative therapies, and eco cabins. I can almost picture it, this self-sufficient and mindful community nestled in the jungle near Tulum.
That's the image they're painting, for sure. And that emphasis on innovation and entrepreneurship suggests that they're looking for people who want to be active participants in building this new way of life, not just passive consumers.
So it's not just about escaping the rat race, it's about creating a viable alternative.
Exactly, and that's where the concept of una nueva tierra, or a new earth, comes into play. They're not just building a housing development, they're trying to create a model
Huh.
for a more sustainable and fulfilling way of life.
This reminds me of when I visited an eco-village a few years back. It was incredible to see people living in such harmony with nature, growing their own food, creating their own energy. It felt like stepping into a different world.
I can imagine. And that sense of stepping into a different world seems to be at the core of CDL 13.20's vision. But, you know, let's be real, it all sounds pretty utopian. Can they actually pull this off?
Yeah.
There are always challenges when you're trying to translate ideals into reality, especially when you're dealing with something as complex as building a community from scratch.
For sure. And let's not forget about the financial aspect. They're actively seeking investors, partners, and donations. Sustainable development, it often comes with a higher price tag.
Yeah.
Maintaining these eco-friendly practices over the long term, it requires that ongoing commitment and resources.
You're hitting on a crucial point. The long-term viability of a project like this, it depends on more than just good intentions. It requires careful planning, financial stability, and a strong sense of shared purpose among the members.
Plus, they're building this project in a region that's already experiencing really rapid growth and development. How do they make sure that CDL 13.20 doesn't contribute to the very problems they're trying to solve? Like environmental degradation or displacement of local communities.
That's a critical question,
Yeah.
and one that any responsible development project needs to consider. While the document doesn't really go into detail about their approach to community engagement, that mention of their proximity to the Siankainen Biosphere Reserve suggests that they have at least some awareness of the ecological sensitivity of the area.
It sounds like they're walking a tightrope here. They're promoting innovation and entrepreneurship, but also advocating for a slower, more mindful pace of life. They're seeking financial backing, but also emphasizing a values-driven approach that might not always align with, profit maximization.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? They're trying to reconcile these seemingly contradictory impulses, progress and preservation, individual growth and communal harmony, material success, and spiritual fulfillment.
And that's what makes this deep dive so captivating. We're not just analyzing a development project. We're exploring a potential blueprint for a different way of living in the world.
And whether or not CDL 13.20 ultimately succeeds. In realizing its vision, the questions it raises are relevant to all of us. How do we create communities that are both sustainable and fulfilling? How do we balance the needs of the individual with the well-being of the collective? And how do we reclaim our relationship with time in a world that's constantly demanding our attention?
Those are some big questions. I think we need a moment to let all this sink in. We've covered a lot of ground, and there's still so much to unpack.
I agree. Let's take a moment to gather our thoughts. And then we'll come back to distill some key takeaways from this deep dive. We'll also leave you with some final thoughts to ponder as you continue exploring these ideas on your own.
Wow, that was a lot to process. It's amazing how, a deep dive into just one project can open up so many questions about how we live and how we relate to time.
Yeah, it really is. It's a testament to the power of ideas, I think. CDL 13.20, whether or not it actually succeeds as a real estate development, it's already started some important conversations.
It really has. As we wrap up this episode, I want to make sure that we, distill those key takeaways for our listeners. What are the big ideas that CDL 13.20 has brought to light?
Well, for me, the most powerful takeaway is that invitation to reconsider our relationship with time. How much of our lives are driven by, external deadlines and pressures versus our own values and aspirations.
That's such a good point. It's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of everyday life that we forget to just, pause and ask ourselves, is this how I really want to be spending my time?
Exactly. And I think CDL 13.20 challenges us to go beyond those individual reflections. And consider the larger systems that shape our experience of time. Can we create communities and workplaces that honor those natural rhythms and prioritize well-being? Can we move away from this culture of constant busyness and towards a more balanced and sustainable way of life?
It feels like such a radical idea, but also a necessary one, you know?
Yeah.
Just seeing the consequences of our current pace of life all around us. Burnout, stress, environmental degradation. Maybe it really is time to try a different approach.
I think so. And CDL 13.20, even with all of its, uncertainties and potential pitfalls, it offers us a glimpse of what might be possible. It's an invitation to imagine a world where time isn't something that's constantly slipping away from us, but a resource we can actually use to create a more meaningful and fulfilling existence.
And that brings us back to that quote from Jose Arguello: possess your own time and you will know your own mind. It's such a powerful statement, and it feels particularly relevant in the context of this project.
It does. It's a reminder that we have the power to choose how we spend our time.
Mm-hmm.
And those choices, they ultimately shape who we become, both individually and collectively.
So as we leave our listeners to ponder these big questions, I think it's important to emphasize that this isn't just about like escaping to an eco village in Mexico. It's about taking those insights and applying them to our own lives, wherever we are and whatever we're doing.
Absolutely. Whether it's setting boundaries at work or
Yeah.
making time for creative pursuits or just slowing down
Yeah.
and appreciating the present moment. We can all take steps to reclaim our time and live more intentionally.
And who knows, maybe by doing so, we can start to create that ripple effect, inspiring others to do the same and eventually shifting the culture towards a more balanced and sustainable way of being.
It's a beautiful vision, and I think it's one worth striving for.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into CDL 1320. We hope it sparked some new ideas and inspired you to explore your own relationship with time. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.